Breaking the Chains, Willie Lynch's sinister blueprint. Welcome back to Baldy's Thoughts. Today, we're diving into one of the most chilling moments in history, a moment that shaped the lives of countless generations. Imagine this. It's 1712. On the banks of the James River in Jamestown, Virginia, wealthy plantation owners have gathered. They're desperate to maintain control over their enslaved laborers, to secure their wealth and to protect their way of life. Then, from the West Indies arrives Willie Lynch, a man with a reputation for solving the problem of rebellion. In his hands he carries a bag containing a secret, a tool that he claims will guarantee control over enslaved Africans for centuries. Let's unpack what was in that bag and how it changed history forever. By 1712, Jamestown was a booming center for the transatlantic slave trade. Wealthy plantation owners depended on enslaved Africans to build their fortunes, but they were constantly terrified of uprisings. Revolts like the 1712 New York slave insurrection made it clear. Enslaved people were not going to accept their condition passively. So these plantation owners turned to Willie Lynch, and Lynch didn't disappoint. He began his speech by telling them exactly what they wanted to hear, that he had a foolproof system to control their enslaved workers, not just for the present, but for generations to come. Lynch's first order of business: divide and conquer. He instructed the masters to exploit every possible difference among the enslaved. Light skin versus dark skin, young versus old, male versus female. Lynch told them to create hierarchies, to give small privileges to one group while denying them to another. This wasn't just about favoritism, it was psychological warfare. By turning the enslaved against each other, they'd be too distracted, too mistrustful to unite against their oppressors. He told them, distrust is stronger than trust, and envy stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. Let that sink in. Lynch understood human psychology. He knew that by fostering division, he could make rebellion almost impossible. But Lynch wasn't just thinking short-term. He promised these masters that his methods would last for centuries if they were careful. His goal wasn't just to control the enslaved in the moment. It was to create a generational cycle of division, mistrust, and submission. He said, "You must keep your slaves physically strong but psychologically weak. You must use fear, mistrust, and envy for control." This wasn't about brute force. It was about planting seeds of division so deep that even the children and grandchildren of the enslaved would carry the same psychological chains. Now here's where it gets dark. After laying out his strategy, Lynch reached into his bag. He pulled out what he called the ultimate tool of control. And what was it? The King James Bible. That's right. Lynch didn't just rely on psychological manipulation. He turned to religion. He told the masters to use the Bible not as a source of liberation, but as a weapon. He showed them how to twist its words to justify slavery and instill obedience. Slaveholders were already using the Bible to enforce their will, but Lynch's methods took it to another level. He told them to focus on verses like Ephesians chapter 6:5. Servants, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling. By preaching these verses, the enslaved were led to believe that their suffering was ordained by God, that resistance was sinful, and that submission would bring them heavenly rewards. Think about the psychological impact. The enslaved weren't just being controlled physically, they were being chained spiritually and mentally. And that was Lynch's ultimate goal. This strategy worked. For generations, enslaved Africans were manipulated into believing that their oppression was part of God's plan. The divisions Lynch planted, based on skin color, gender, and faith, took root, shaping how African Americans were treated and how they viewed themselves long after slavery ended. Now let's bring this to the present. The psychological chains that Lynch described, the mistrust, the divisions, the misuse of faith, they still linger. We see it in colorism, we see it in fractured communities, and we see it in the ways we sometimes turn against each other. By educating ourselves, Reclaiming our narratives and building unity, we can dismantle the systems that were designed to divide us. Willie Lynch promised his doctrine would last for centuries, but it doesn't have to. By confronting this history and choosing a different path, we can rewrite the narrative, not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Baldy's Thoughts. Together, we can break these chains and build a future rooted in unity and strength. Join the conversation. Follow Baldy for more insights on history, empowerment, and unity.